expecting somebody from our auditor's company to come, and we'll be moving her up on the agenda. But since she's not here yet, we'll go ahead as planned. Remind me, have we given some time to wait for citizen comment in case anybody else shows up late, or just that? Okay. So we'll approve make a motion to approve the minutes from January 9th meeting. I'll entertain a motion. Is there a second?
Second. Question. Do you know who's sending us all the PDFs of our paperwork before the?
Who's sending them?
Yeah. Because I don't recall getting any of this in PDF, but was this all PDF?
I don't usually send that, I only send the agenda. Brian drops the hard copies off at houses.
You talk about the minutes and all that stuff?
Everything, like our paperwork that we get,
Right.
I think it's best practice to do a PDF, it's public record. Would it be possible, without too much of a burden, before our board meetings, to have this sent to all of us
Sure.
through PDF?
That's fine, I'm scanning it, I put it on the website for citizens,
Yeah.
so that's fine, I'll just send it to you too.
Well, not just me, but I mean the board.
Yeah,
Yeah, all right, thanks.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Does that mean we might also get it a little bit sooner, or would it be the same delivery? And are we gonna go with physical copies as well?
Yeah,
That is up to you.
some things don't come or get finished, like bills, especially if the meeting's the 7th or 8th day of the month, bills might come that day. So if we don't get them in, then you get a late fee. So you might get the bills very late or just in your pay.
Right, so,
I usually don't have a complete packet to put on the website until the day of the meeting.
okay, so we're already getting it a little bit before you make it public for everybody.
You're getting what's available earlier in the week, yeah,
And
he takes
whatever.
it to you.
Okay,
Well,
and then we often don't get the bills or petty cash in printed form until we show up here because they're not finalized. But could we actually be getting those
If they're
digitally?
ready, we'll get them.
Okay, so I think that's a great idea.
But everything that we get, whenever it's available, just PDF it so it's available, that'd be helpful.
I do like printed copies delivered still.
Which is fine, that's
Yeah.
additional, but could we get a PDF of everything?
That's no problem.
All
I'm already scanning it and doing that for the website, so it's no problem to
All
do
right.
I think we assumed you were going to the website.
that. That's a fairly new thing too, putting it on the website, so. No problem.
Yeah, any other issues or questions relating to that? So all in favor?
All right?
Aye. We'll move on to approval of the bills.
Okay, I'll go through some of the unusuals. Autowares, we had to buy a tailgate light and turn signal. You know what Chase Payment Technologies is, that's the office deposits scanned up in the office. The Chicago Tribune Media Group with disbursement in full, that had to be posted per, not code, but per regulation, per policy. Evanston Water Department, that's a drinking fountain water bill. Comcast, you know what that is, that's the Canyon Fieldhouse. As we go down, Carol Lahoon is a refund. Personnel Concepts is posters we put up for employees' rights and things of that nature. Quill Office Supplies and Toner, that's why it's so expensive. Russo Power was blades and a power traction cord for one of the snow blowers. Deborah Siegel refund for cardboard camp class out here. Two Brothers Heating, we had the furnace tuned up in this building. And that's big. Oh, and then KGBA Rogers is the end of the website. There's still pictures to come.
Brian, did you say that Sarin?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's the brochure.
Oh, okay.
And that includes, the actual product, printing,
Okay.
mailing, pre-sort, setup fee. That's the big one. The next one will be $6,500.
A question, would it be a burden? We get this report, the front page, alphabetical order. The Bill's detailed report, is that alphabetical or is that numerical?
That's the budget code.
Yeah, so it's different.
Right.
Would it be possible on our front page to have a correlating, code on each item, just so we can easily find it on the detail?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Just a cross-reference?
AT&T would be CA5.
Yeah,
Well, you can, the first page is just a list of payees. That is, in essence, it's repeated as your first section on the detail report. You know, it's got the same total, 27,831.31. And that has in the description the codes that you're asking about.
And is that always identical? That first section is basically what we're
Yes.
seeing on the first page?
Yes.
Okay,
So it's there.
it is there.
It's there.
You just have
On
to
the
look at
Bill's detail report. Just keep flipping.
well, but are you cool with my question? Is that possible? Would that be a burden on the front page?
On the front
They
page.
have the code, and what the code I mean is so that when we look at details, it's easy to find it.
But I think what they're saying is that what the front page is, Dan, is literally this first section, when you
Yes.
turn the page, it's the same.
And how does that correlate to the detail then afterwards? That's not the same, right?
Is that an expansion
Well,
or is that
No,
additional?
the sections below, like, okay, take ADP, it's CA 22. So then when you go down to CA 22, you'll see all the detail there. So this is the summary at the top, and then it's totaled by sub-account below. Understand what I'm saying?
I
You
do,
relax.
but I'm still not sure what the answers to my question is. On the front page, could we have a correlating code so we can easily find it on
I
the
think the
detail?
answer is no, it would just be a repeat of this report here. Because all she's doing, because it's embedded in the memo field, and you don't have the memo field on the bill's summary page.
Okay,
So it's just a repeat of what you already have.
right, but it still doesn't answer my question. I mean, is that okay with you?
Well, then why print it twice is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I'm confused as well. I feel like what you're asking for is.
Like, for someone to look at the ADP payroll right away.
Sure.
Okay, so where do I go? What page do I look at for the detail?
CA 22.
And to me, that's convoluted. It's kind of hard to find it right away. And I would like to just a
No,
code.
a given PE may have multiple, and a particular invoice may be charged to multiple expense categories.
So
So then it will be spread out all among all the little details down below. Or in the case of ADP, the opposite is also true. You may have multiple invoices that roll up to that single total of $535.50.
okay. So in
But
that
if you-
example with ADP, could there be a simple reference where to find it?
CAA?
Yeah, I don't know, something, just so it's easy to find. Because it is spread out, and I get that,
But no, right there, this section is exactly what you're asking for.
but that's not the detail.
Yes, it is.
Well, what's
That's the
below it?
same as the front.
What's below
What do you mean what's below it? After the total for
Yeah.
2010?
it? Because you're saying that's spread
Then
out.
it's a repeating of the same information as above, but in sub-account order instead of payee order.
Right,
The top is in payee order, that's the total charge,
okay,
okay? Then everything after that is a restatement of the same information, but in sub-account order instead.
so,
So
okay,
it's, you know, why it doesn't come out in numerical order, I don't know, that's
like utilities, for instance, is CA 0,
CA05.
or,
CA5.
yeah, CA 05, right?
CA5.
So when we look at the front page, how many of those are CA 05?
Well, just look at the total to 2010, and just scan the memo field for all the CA5s. Or go straight to CA5 and see all the details.
So on the front page, which ones would be CA 05?
All
The same ones that are in the 2010 detail.
It's the same thing.
Well, I'm saying the front page, look at the front page.
I mean, could she add the memo field to that report?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
I don't know, because I don't know how she's generating this report or why she's generating this report. Honestly, this report is done only for the benefit of the commissioners. No one else uses it but you. This is the one used for the accounting.
When you say this and this, what do you mean, front page versus the rest of it?
The rest of it.
Okay,
But if we switch pages,
For the treasurer and the auditor, we just throw that first page away. We go straight to this page, which is a repeat of what's on the front page, just with the added detail that you're asking for. It's an exact repeat of what's on the first page with the added detail that
Except
you're asking
one's
for.
in
So it would look
alphabetical
like
order
this.
and other ones in coded order,
No,
right?
this is an alphabetic order. The detail in that account is in alphabetic order.
So utilities, CA.
No, okay, now you've gone too far. Just stay on the top category. The 2020 category,
Yeah, I get it, I understand.
okay? That's in alphabetic order.
But the rest of the report,
Is a repeat of that. It's a repeat and restatement of those details.
well, and it's an expansion too.
Think of it as it's a debit and credit. Here's all the debits, the rest of the report is the list of all the credits. But it's what you're asking for. You want the CA5s? The CA5s are in the memo field.
so on the front page, where would be the CA 05? On the front page?
Well, it's not there, but why is it?
It's
that
not
you-
there, so you'd have to add this same memo column to that. And then it will look exactly like this.
So, to answer my question,
Can
then,
she add that memo field? I don't know, we could ask her. But that, it's
Ask
just
who?
gonna be a repeat of
ask who?
Jessica. This was produced by Jessica.
Okay. If it is,
This is a
if
quick,
it's that simple, then we do that, that's an easy answer.
well, it's just gonna be printing the same section twice,
Right,
that's all.
it's just, it would be good to know why it is that you
Yeah.
think that's necessary.
Right. Well, why not if it's that simple?
But what
So
is
why
it
print it
achieving?
twice is what I'm asking.
Well, when I look at the front page, which is what we usually make our decision on, I want to find the detail right away easily.
Well, let's get the front page then, let's put this as the front
Then
page.
just look at, then don't look at the front page, just look at this section.
Let's just turn this around, make this the front
Because it's
page,
that total.
and we'll realize that we don't need to look at
Yeah,
this
maybe
page
we don't.
unless we want to.
Right.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I get that you wanna get the information quickly, but given that we do get this before the meeting, it's not like we're expected to
No, I
just process
don't.
all this.
I know.
Sometimes we get
I didn't get this.
Occasionally.
I would like a PDF of everything before the meeting.
Okay, well, that was already addressed with your question for, you know, a
No,
digital
for
copy.
today's discussion, I didn't have it before.
True, but then if we're getting a PDF moving forward from now,
This
You
is,
don't need
that
additional
particular
detail.
report is frequently not available until like an hour before the meeting. Because they're trying to get the bills, all the current bills that came in the mail today on the report, so that we get it voted on, so we don't pay late fees to all these vendors by waiting until the next board meeting.
Okay, and I'm cool, I'm not trying to stall, I'm just trying to say, I'm trying to find an easier way to analyze it as we vote on it, that's all. And it might be that we get rid of the front page.
And all I'm trying to say is what you're asking for, you're getting, it's there. It's right there. Exactly what you're asking for is right there.
well, also, Dan, if you wanna look at it by category, when you're in that detailed report, you know, it's utilities, then you see the total for all utilities. If you wanna see if any stick out as being particularly high, they're right there in the list, you know?
Right.
And all the other things too. So I think Pat makes a good point, that it's literally like, turn the page and you're in the details. As to why we do this summary on the front page, page?
I don't know.
I don't know either, it's maybe one of those, we've
Well-
always done it that way. you
If
know?
we don't wanna deal with the, if we don't wanna go through the detail.
Right, and you just
Somebody
want
else
to
has done that
see a
already.
quick
We just
total.
want the categories that we're familiar with
Right.
and give them an opportunity to tell us. He's explaining some of it. If we really don't need his explanation, we can go through this ourselves, each item, and we'll know where the money went.
Right, so like on utilities, the total amount on the third page of our report is $1,049.65. I can't find that number on the front page.
You won't.
Right, so that's part of the confusion.
Well, because it's the detail of all those payees. But the other way you see it is just scan the memo column of the $27,000 total.
Right,
That's what you're asking for.
I mean, and
Right.
Dan, if you are after like a quick scan of all totals,
It's
that
right
would
there.
literally be another type of summary that could be run. So that it's
Oh.
not just alphabetical,
Okay.
it's like category.
good point.
So that could be done.
That could,
You
yeah,
know?
that's a good point.
And so instead of like lessening the summaries, we could in fact expand them.
That might help.
So I think I'm clear now with what your goal is, which is a quicker understanding, and I
Yeah,
think
that's
that's
all.
fair. I think
That's it.
that's fair.
Yeah,
And if we're getting the PDF digitally from now on, we'll
That'll
also
help.
have additional time.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So are you good if we move on from
Yep.
there? Okay, so, we, need to approve these bills.
Make a motion to approve the bills.
You're making that motion? Oh.
$27,831.31.
And a second? I can.
I thought you did.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was saying, and a second. Seeing if I made, so I thought you guys were taking some extra time. So I will second. And, all in favor?
Aye.
Petty cash?
Yes.
Okay, petty cash, Amazon.com with some stencils, for some work to write signs. City of Evanston Water Department, $200 for the ice rink. E-file tax forms, those are $10.99 sent out by Jerry. MailChimp, emails over 2,000. Spot Hero, parking for the conference, Natalie's car. Squarespace is the website domain. Wufu Infinity Box Incorporated is annual fee for online programs. YWCA was workshops times 5.
In this case, the summary page highlights the reason why I think this summary page was developed for the commissioners. It lists all the payees only once. But if you look at the summary on the other report, for example, you see the YWCA listed 6 times because there were 6 separate charges to the same payee.
representing.
And that was, something that commissioners in the past didn't want, so they asked for a summarized, just give me the payees once there, because they didn't want to see the same payee multiple times in that summary section.
And does that represent that the Y, the hourly?
It represents, the reporting comes out based upon however Jessica and QuickBooks works for her to generate that report.
Brian, do you know what that represents, the 75 and the Y, is that the hourly?
No, it's a seminar fee for individuals.
Those are the workshops that we went
Workshops.
to.
Oh, for individuals,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So-
So there are 5 of us want,
I see,
and it's 75 a person.
got it, thanks.
I'll make a motion to approve petty cash in the amount of $1,280.04.
I actually have some questions real quick. That MailChimp emails over, blah, blah, blah. That's just like in any given month, our total emails sent, and we get an overage charge?
No, it has to do with how many people are on your email list. So MailChimp is free if you have less than 2,000 people on your list.
Okay.
But we have graduated beyond 2,000 people following.
So we're gonna see that monthly, because we're only gonna get
Yeah.
a bigger and bigger list.
Yeah.
Is there any other option for sort of like a monthly payment that would include a certain amount of emails, or is that what this is? Okay,
That's the lowest, that's the lowest tier.
okay. And then Squarespace, is that also a monthly charge?
No, this is when we, moved our old website to our new website. It's now hosted by Squarespace instead of GoDaddy. Right?
No.
Nope, that's wrong. Matt can explain that to
way that it works is, we went from an old Squarespace to a new Squarespace. And when you do that, you sign up for a year with that new Squarespace, but we canceled the old Squarespace, so you should see a refund in the next month for any remaining amount. So let's say your old one ran from October to October. It will now run from February to February. So anything from February to October that's remaining will be refunded back to you because you now have a new start date.
And then moving forward, if that's a yearly charge, that wouldn't probably show up in petty cash, that would be just part of our regular charges?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
And then the Woohoo Infinity Box, what is that again?
It's where I build all of our registration forms.
Okay, and is that a monthly charge or is that a one-time?
No, that's an annual.
Annual, okay.
And that also went up in price this year. They raised the fees, but we have the lowest, possible selection.
Okay. And did somebody make a motion?
I did.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so
I'd like to
Yes.
make a motion to, have Kate, give an audit and report form.
I will second that. It's, we're just moving it up the agenda, correct?
correct.
Okay, so all in favor of moving her up? Aye. You've got the floor.
Hi, how are you? It's good to see you all again. As I'm sure you're aware, this year, as of January 1, 2019, Siggage acquired Community Associates, so it's a different auditing firm that we're kind of working with and a little bit kind of a different structure. So when we issued the audit report, we got two reports. We have the board communication and the audit report. On the board communication, we want to try and, seeing the board isn't really involved in the audit process so much, we want to kind of convey more information to the board as the part of the audit process. So the first part of the board communication is the SAS 114 letter, which basically goes through the audit process in terms of whether we had any difficulties, whether we had to make adjustments, whether there was anything that was kind of out of the ordinary, anything unusual. This was a standard letter. Community Associates would provide this letter. Now it's just a report with more information. The next section is the adjusting journal entries that we made as a course of the audit. When Jerry is recording all of the monthly transactions and maintaining the funds, he's doing it on a fund level. The audit has the fund levels in the back of the report, but there's also the government-wide statements. So a lot of our audit adjustments were to record those entries to get the Part District's financials from the fund level to the government-wide financial statements that you see at the beginning of the audit report. So some of these are material and are significant adjustments. However, it's more of the accounting mechanism to get from the financial statements that you'll see on a monthly basis to get to the government-wide financial statements. So there was no major audit adjustment that we found things being improperly recorded or that kind of issue or a fundamental departure from GAAP in the accounting. It's just, you don't maintain, it's not necessary to maintain the government-wide financial statements. As a result, we have a number of years adjustments, but that's just kind of standard with this kind of thing.
If I could just jump in and add to that, it's primarily like the pension accounting and the depreciation accounting.
Sorry, one more question. You're saying that this is all, everything you've covered so far is stuff that Community used to do as well? That's not anything that's
Absolutely.
new so far?
Community just didn't issue
The letter?
the journal entries in a report in this format.
Okay.
But we would have the similar types of journal entries that we're having now, but we're presenting this information in the board packet as opposed to, we would normally give these journal entries to Jerry and not necessarily pass them along to the board.
Okay.
So there was one entry that we had that was on our summary of uncorrected misstatements, and this was a journal entry we did not make. And this was for the OPEB valuation. Effective as of 6/30/2018, the Park District was required to implement GASB 75 and record any future costs for healthcare. While the Park District doesn't have any implicit liability or explicit liability to fund healthcare for retirees at this point in time, there is potentially a cost in that if retirees stay on the plan, it could have an impact on the rate. However, because this amount is immaterial to your financial statements, this isn't something we feel that you need to record. So there is a footnote in the audit report for GASB 75. However, no liability was recorded on the park's financial statements because it was immaterial and it will not have a major impact on the Park District. Going forward, we don't see any reason why this would have any kind of major change if in the future there were any changes to the health insurance or to the employee, number of employees or that kind of thing. Potentially the Park District might need to get an evaluation to assess that, but at this point in time, the estimated liability is so low that that would not be necessary at this time, so.
That's the 15,815.
That's the 15,000, yep. So then the last document in, the board communication is the management letter. And in the management letter, we went through and identified, deficiencies that were identified when we did the audit. The first point is that we had some uninsured cash balances as of 6/30/2019. By FDIC limits, if you have more than $250,000 at any given bank, it potentially is uninsured. This is a point that Jerry has addressed subsequent to the audit. And as of 6/30/2019, it was a very small dollar amount, so it's not as if there's a huge risk that the park was under, but it's something to monitor going forward when you're looking at your cash balances, to keep an eye out as to if you're over that insured level. And potentially, I believe this year, you had opened accounts at a different bank. If in the future that was something that you didn't want to necessarily do, you could potentially talk to the bank about getting a collateral agreement put in place. But at this point in time, while we did see that we had uninsured cash balances at year end, I don't think it's a major problem going forward, especially as it's been addressed. Our next point was, this is kind of a little bit minor, but all of the cash in the park is kept in the general fund. And the other funds will have a due to and from the general fund. We reclassified that amount to cash to allocate the cash amongst funds instead of showing a due to and from funds. So it's kind of 6 of one and half a dozen of another, but according to the accounting standards, we should have the cash, at least in the audit, allocated between the funds and not just in the general fund. And then our last point was, because the district is so small and you have a very finite, limited number of people in the accounting office, there is concern about the segregation of duties. The Park District tries very hard to make sure there's a lot of oversight and a lot of review, but there are certain times and places where you have people that are performing multiple accounting functions. And we just want to kind of bring this up that, you know, it's something especially if there's a change of personnel or that sort of thing, to kind of keep in mind and to always continue evaluating the way accounting transactions are handled to ensure that you have those mitigating controls of having the review and the oversight to make sure that there is no issue in terms of the accounting procedures. So this is something that, with a small staff in a small district, there's not really a great way to just, okay, you need to reallocate this or break up this part because of the limited number of people. There's only so much you can allocate. But by having review and oversight and having multiple people involved in different processes, you can regain that kind of control. But that's just something that we wanted to kind of bring up because it's something that, especially in the day and age where there's so many electronic transactions and that kind of thing, and there's not necessarily as much of a paper trail, we want to make sure that it's something that's in the forefront of everyone's mind. And then in our other comments, we address the upcoming GASB pronouncements that are going to affect districts. For the next 2 years, the only one that may potentially affect your district is there's an accounting pronouncement on leases. So if you have any leases that are over 1 year, we'll, during the audit for, I believe it's 21, would have to evaluate whether we need to address the accounting procedures for that. But that's the only one that's coming up that would have any impact on the district. So any questions or?
Overall, our financial position is,
Overall, your financial position is pretty strong. You've got good cash reserves. You don't have any debt, which is kind of a rarity in local governments these days. Given the donations in the cash reserves that you do have balances in place for capital improvements going forward. So overall, it's a strong position, so.
question 2,
Yes,
will you be on time next year? The audit.
yes. This year, we unfortunately with the acquisition, we grossly underestimated the amount of time to get everything converted over. And because the audit is such a labor-intensive process with the review procedures, we got backlogged. So for this year, we did file an extension for the AFR. Next year, we are going to bend over backwards to get back on track and not have the delays. And I know it's frustrating for you. Trust me, it was incredibly frustrating for us as well. So we don't like to be in a situation where we're not getting the information timely. So we will do everything in our power to get that done on time.
In your audit,
Yes.
you guys look at our total estimated assets? Like our acreage and who owns it? Is that part of this, or is it strictly cash flowing funds?
No, we do. We have, in the government-wide financial statements, we have the fixed asset schedule. So we have evaluation, we have the historical cost value for the land, and any assets that are purchased go on at a purchase price, and then those are depreciated over their useful life.
Do you know, or does anyone in the room know approximately what our assets are worth?
We know well, if you look at, I'm gonna answer your question, but I think you're asking a different one than I'm gonna answer.
I'm guessing you're asking what's the market value worth of them?
Well,
And the audit and financials are looking more at what is the financial worth of assets.
okay.
And those are two different worlds.
Right,
So
that's
if
what
you,
you sell it for.
if you look at page 4
Okay, of the,
of the audit report, it's the statement of net position.
okay,
So under the asset section, we have capital assets not being depreciated. That's the historical cost of the land. The next line is the capital assets being depreciated, net of depreciation. That is the cost of the assets that are in service, less the depreciation that they have.
Okay. And do we know who owns our assets? Is it our district, or is there other legal entities that own our property?
The district.
It's ours, okay. Thank you.
Were we timely with you and getting the information you needed and?
You were. You were. The delays are entirely on us. And again, it's a one-time thing. We have everything converted over, and we will definitely be, more timely next year.
And Jerry, as far as you know, we weren't financially punished by the late audit, were we?
No.
So everything's good with the county and everybody else?
Well, I don't know that we know yet, because that process that all this information feeds into will carry on up until June, when they're finalizing the tax bill stuff. That's some of it. Some things like the debt disclosure ordinance, they don't, it's like they run on a timetable that's greatly delayed from the here and now and the moment. So I can't say here and now that there won't be repercussions down the road, but with them having filed for extensions and everything, we should be fine.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean 6 months from now we get a letter from somebody at the state or somewhere saying, oh, we're finding you because of this, and we've got to unwind whatever that issue is and deal with it. I don't anticipate that being the case, but I can't state with certainty that I know that to be the case right now.
And there weren't fines for the extension itself?
No,
Okay.
no, the comptroller's office grants a 60-day extension, and the AFR was submitted within that 60-day window.
Okay.
And I can't remember what it was I had to call, when I got that email about, the being able to update the points of contact for
Yes.
FOIA and stuff like that. I happened to have to call the state, and they immediately right on the phone said, oh, okay, you have an extension until February 20th. It's like they already knew. That was like her opening sentence to me the minute she knew I was Ridgeville Park District. Oh, we have you on file for an
That's
extension
the
of such
first
and such
thing
a
that
date.
comes up with your
Yeah.
account. You pull it up, and it pops up, you have until this date to file.
So, that made me feel good the minute that the state was already, they were telling me, but I didn't even know yet.
Right.
So,
And so we should have that FOIA information all.
yeah, and I've gotten the confirmations that, that was updated, and I got, that disclosure ordinance, I got
Disclosure, yes,
confirmations that was uploaded as well. So I think we're okay, but.
Thank you for your thorough work and glad you came tonight,
Well,
appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time, and if any questions arise afterwards, just let us know, so.
We appreciate that you traveled a
Thank
long
you.
distance to be here. So,
We still owe you a little money, we gotta send me an invoice.
I will let the partner know, I don't generate those invoices, so I will remind him and we'll get that out.
Or we'll apply for an extension.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, so we do need a motion to accept the audit?
So
Like,
move,
accept
that's
the
what
audit?
we usually do.
Okay, second, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
was that something that needed to be in writing?
What's that?
Is that something that needs to be in writing?
No, we always just,
Well, no, like a year or two ago, something changed about that. I thought last year we had to do that in writing.
Huh.
Because we have to certify in writing that it was accepted.
just take.
Charlie.
water back in.
For the AFR,
Yeah.
because you are under the 850 threshold, there, depending on what the option that had been selected, you wouldn't necessarily be required to have an audit every year, and you could potentially submit a certified vote. Their system, for some reason, was defaulting to have you upload a certified vote as opposed to uploading the audit.
Okay.
So that's why we had to have that. It is now set
Back to
to,
the other way, good.
for the audit, because we have that, we go ahead and submit it, but you don't have to have a certified vote this year.
Thanks.
Thanks, drive
No
safe.
problem.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay, so on the agenda, it says approve certify the annual 4 in the agenda, which was monthly reports, and we'll go with Brian's first.
Please don't call us tomorrow. Summer camp registration opens at 10 a.m. and we expect to be very busy the rest of the day. Natalie's done a great job prepping the office and getting the new website done with Mr. Rogers, correct information, so we are ready for the rush. I'll repeat a few things. The audit has arrived, as we discussed. Jerry will have some updates, some more updates a little bit later. Kate was here, so it's all good. We have some projects upcoming this spring. The roof on the garage art studio, which is in the budget, will be replaced. I will have bids for you to approve at the April 9th meeting. Hopefully the roof will go up that week or within the month of April. We will also be repairing lighter and Reaper's Park drinking fountains, along with replacing approximately 7 benches throughout the parks. The current plan is to purchase 7 benches and put 2 in Elks, 2 in Reba, 1 in Ridgeville Park, 1 in Cayman East, and 1 in Lighter Park. This will be a great addition to our parks. By the way, we put them on concrete. And if you want to see the type of bench, there's one right out here, and there's a couple in Cayman. They're beautiful. The ice rink was barely open 3 days. It was barely open for 3 days before warmer weather hit and made skating dangerous. What we had was the ice. We put it in layers, but we got water and thin ice in several areas, so that you couldn't skate because you hit the tarp and then $1,300 down the drain. So we kept it closed. We will reevaluate on Saturday to see if we can reopen, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week back in the 40s. So ice skating doesn't look good for this year. The rule of thumb is not to flood or water the rink after February 15th because the days are just too long, the sun's out too much today.
Is there school on Monday?
No.
No.
So if it's possible and it looks okay on Saturday, can we try to have it open on Monday?
We have to put water on it.
Why?
Well, hopefully we don't.
Yeah.
I think we do, but we'll check
Because
it
of
out.
bad condition?
Yeah,
We have a cold night tonight tomorrow, so it'll likely freeze.
likely.
So
We will,
we'll evaluate it
Yeah.
tomorrow.
and we gotta remove the snow, but the east end sits high, so when we water it, it's the last to gain enough depth to skate. So,
Well, I'm just saying, if there's any way, just to get a couple of days, if there's no school on that day, you know, if they see some kids out there on Sunday or whatever, you know, might be good to at least give it the extra, you know,
we could close it,
effort.
possibly close it.
How much use does it see when there's actually good weather for it?
What's that?
How much use does the rink see?
Well, it kind of depends, like, it builds momentum, so if, a few years ago, we had 4 or 5 weeks of skating, and you get 20 kids a day, and some days, a group would come and play hockey, or a group would come and surf, and there's neighborhood boys right over here that love it, but, it's hard, you know, we take numbers when we're open, but it's 20 or 30 a day max.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen that this year.
No, we
We've
haven't.
seen a few days of a couple of
No.
kids, but that's
Now,
about.
when I was growing up, that was the place to be, but we don't have those winters anymore.
Mhm.
And then finally, we attended the YWCA workshops over the last month and hosted a racial healing circle here. Natalie will have further updates on the equity action plan.
Brian, a few questions just on with an equity lens on the summer camp registration. Do you know approximately last summer, how many slots or how many kids did we serve and how many were of color? And this year, is there any way to help enhance our neighbors of color to be part of our summer program? And what's our projection?
I have no idea on the number. I can tell you how many kids were in camp, but there are several kids that were in our camp, you just don't know. I mean,
We have not collected that demographic
Yeah.
information
that's
before.
fine.
We are collecting it this time.
Okay,
So this will be the first time that we've asked that question on any of our registration forms.
okay,
So
cool.
ask me at the end of August, and I'll have some numbers for you. In terms of engagement with the community, that will be part of what we are working on with the Equity Outreach Committee.
In my experience on summer camp, fiasco in Evanston, is that there's a tendency for the privileged white parents to scramble at the beginning and fill the slots. And there are different equitable measures that could be in place to assure that other families, especially families of color, could fairly get into and compete for those slots. For instance, with District 65, all of us social workers are given, TED funds to distribute. So those slots are automatically kind of saved, and there's other ways that we could do it. I just didn't know if we had anything in place or not.
We work very closely with the TED Fund. They usually call us at some point with however many kids that they have, and we'll register them for camp. I was communicated with a social worker, I believe from Lincoln today, who reached out to ask those questions. So I talked to her about that. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. We work with them closely and they're excellent, so.
So for those who might be listening online, or others in the room who don't know, approximately how many kids were in our summer camp last year? Approximately.
You'd have to add it up, there's 45 in arts, approximately 35 in time travelers, 45 in day camp 5 to 7, 15 in 3 and 4, and then the afternoon partner camps, I don't have those numbers, but they were 15 to 20.
So less than 150?
Over 150, that was about 160.
Is that under 200?
It's under 200 most likely.
Okay.
But then we go into cardboard camp, which is two weeks after our camp, and then we go into bridge camps, and then you're well over 200. It's 10 or 11 weeks of camp.
And you have
usually-
different kids coming to different sessions. We can certainly figure out that number, but I would say it's probably close to 300.
Oh, close to 300. That's good to know. And so moving forward, it's my hope that as a district, we can measure how many neighbors of color are participating. And I'm happy to hear that. I've just recently joined the equity committee.
If they tell us.
What's that?
If they tell us.
If they tell you, that's right.
Because it's tricky. I mean, you're gonna do it by eyesight? I don't think so. I mean, it's just, we've got all,
Yeah.
I mean, one of my granddaughters is a granddaughter or grandson. People, I would count them as minorities.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a tricky area.
We've got the question on the registration form, and there's an option to not answer. So
Thank you.
we'll collect
All
the
right.
information that people will offer us, and I
Thank
will
you.
report back.
Or that would include other, what are the categories? Just
Oh gosh, yes, there's a list, and I use the same list, that the census uses, with some of the verbiage from what the YWCA uses. And then our specific registration form does not allow for another slot, so you can't unfortunately type it in, but you can select multiple. So if you identify yourself in with multiple races, then you have that option, and then you also have the option not to answer if you don't want to.
So it sounds pretty complete. I mean, it sounds like you're trying to get.
Yeah, absolutely. Mhm.
It sounds like there's a data collection step that we're going to institute that we haven't before, but it's obviously a separate step to kind of talk about if we, give priority registration of some sort to certain groups. For instance, scholarships is another thing we, have given a fair amount of over the years, but we don't have super clear procedures, in place for who gets them, how people request them, et cetera. And that's definitely something that I think was on our short list of IAPD self-assessment points that we were gonna get more clear on, right, Matt? Is that one of them, scholarship stuff?
Yeah.
So, you know, if we collect data this time around, it doesn't necessarily mean that any procedures are changing other than the data collection itself.
It's a start.
And then I think, yeah, the equity work, you know, that we can do on that data and then make changes, you know, based on that is a whole other, thing to talk about and explore, for sure. For instance, you know, if our camps are to fill up tomorrow, right away, whoever got there first is the, you know, the group of people who get in. And so if there are issues, any kinds of barriers to people being able to register their kids right at 10 a.m., and if those are barriers that we need to find ways to make that more accessible, that's something to consider.
Right.
And then also just financial, you know, I don't know if people have to wait around for any extra spots and apply for a scholarship, or if we actually give priority to scholarships ahead of time. Those are definitely things to, you know, get more clear on our policies.
But currently, there's really no weighted vetting of applicants for the opening tomorrow, so anyone from anywhere can apply. And historically, have our summer campers been mostly from our district, you know, over 50%?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure.
Because we have always collected that, right, whether you're resident or not, because the price depends on that.
Yeah,
so-
twice the fee, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that's data that we can already look at, you know,
Thanks.
as part of the bigger data picture.
Yep.
Thank you, Brian. So moving on to Jerry's report.
Okay, you should have a set of documents for me in your packets. I'll start with notable activity in the last month. Obviously, the most important one was that the annual report was available for discussion and approval at the meeting. The audit yielded changes in some of the numbers that feed into the annual statement of receipts and disbursements that was filed with Cook County as required by state law. So in your packet from me, and I think also separately you got another copy, is the amended annual statement of receipts and disbursements, or also known as the Illinois Public Funds Statement. You can tell which is the prior version and which is the current version by note 2 on page 2, because note 2 in the original version explained that it was unaudited and subject to revision, and now the note 2 indicates their audited figures and explains what the revisions were. And they were basically to some of the revenue figures having to do with somehow rules had to be handled. Another notable activity is that we made the IRS filing deadline for 1099 MISC forms. So those are taken care of for the year. And lastly, under notable activity, I moved, as I mentioned last month, to transfer funds out of Wintrust to Chase because we had gotten over our FDIC limits at Wintrust again due to interest income. And I also, the prior month, took care of getting excess funds out of Byline Bank. So we're in good standing everywhere. Kate touched on that in the audit, and what she didn't really mention or remember perhaps is, you know, the reason we were in that overage position back in June was we'd just come out of the election, and we're in the middle of trying to get our signers changed at the banks, and so we knew about the problem, we were trying to fix it, everything was taking a lot longer than normal because of the election, changing the signers and getting through the process, and we've just opened up the account with the Illinois funds. So it's a lot faster and easier to resolve those issues now with that. We don't maintain collateral agreements with all of our banking relationships. We only have collateral agreements with Chase, and that's primarily because it's only at Chase we regularly run way over the $250,000 limit, which is primarily because of the tax receipts that come into that account. So
Is a collateral agreement just a way to get around the?
Yes, yeah. State law says you've got to have it if you're going to go, you know, over the 250,000, and it's kind of a pain to get. It's like we just went through the process of the annual renewal of our one at Chase, and it was like a 6-week long ordeal to get there. To have to do that at every single bank would just, it'd drive me to drink.
Jerry, my recalling was only $7,500 over, wasn't it?
Right, right. Like she said, the dollar amounts weren't big, but it's the principle of
Yeah.
you're not supposed to
Right.
go over. you know, even the dollar amount we were over at Wintrust wasn't big, it was, I forget the number, $70, $100, some real small number this month. But again, the principle is we're over, get the money.
How do major park districts doing with 10, 12, $14 million walk-ins?
Well, they're putting all their money in the Illinois funds, or they're investing directly in some of the types of securities that you're allowed to. They're not spreading their money across all the banks. We've traditionally been so small and so conservative, we just put it in banks and deal with it. But as we've been building up balances, the number of relationships and the management of those different relationships has just gotten time consuming.
And will you refresh our memories on the solution that you came up with that previously? It was to put the money in the Illinois funds,
In
or?
the Illinois funds.
Okay,
In this case, they just roll it out of those banks into our Chase account, and then if it's a persistent balance, then I'm moving it into the Illinois funds. But like this year, the overages came at the times of the year when we're low on funds anyway at the Chase relationship, because tax receipts haven't been coming in, so it was helpful to the funding of the daily operations.
mhm,
Yeah, we just basically got caught in the middle of a longer than usual timing process, or I wouldn't have had those balances sitting there at year end. You know, like these ones during the year we get rid of, but we couldn't get them out by June 30th last year, so. Because of all the changing signers, I just didn't have what we needed in place to get there. The lesson is just react sooner next time. You know, we'll just start the problem, we'll wait as long as we waited to figure it out last time. Where was that? That was transfer tickets. So now on to the monthly reports. I don't have the regular set of monthly reports because I spent a lot of time dealing with the audit and the year-end 1099s and the statement of public fund statement. So all I've got for you are the balance sheets, which you've not seen at all this year, because we've been waiting for the audit. And because of the audit, there are changes to the balance sheet, so I'm going to spend a little time talking through those reports. I've given you two sets of balance sheets. One is dated July 1st, and one is dated January 1st. The July 1st one is basically opening up the year, and so the balances there match the annual report. That's how we get the fiscal year started. You'll find in a few cases it doesn't match to the dollar, because the auditors work with dollar amounts truncating the cents, and we balance down to the penny with our bank relationship. So there's some little rounding errors here and there, but essentially the numbers are the same. The January 1st one is the same figures as you had last month in the December monthly reports, just reflected, flowed through and reflected in the balance sheet now. I'm going to kind of talk to you about that a little bit. If you look at the balance sheet dated January 1st, couple of things. The auditors have changed the formatting of how they report the funds in the annual report. You may have noticed. It used to be in the past, the working cash fund was rolled into the minor funds and was a subtotal in the minor funds. They now treat working cash as a separate figure, and they don't call the minor funds anymore. They call them special revenue funds. I think what they're trying to do is highlight the non-revenue, highly unique and special nature of the working cash fund. Whereas the special revenue funds are things like our IMRF fund, our Social Security fund, our liability insurance fund, and our capital fund. So I've made the change in the balance sheet to match the annual report. That's partly selfish on my part, because I'm just trying to make it easier for me to balance the annual report when it comes out, but it makes the reporting that we see each month consistent with what you'll see in the annual report. Another thing that you'll notice is the cash and investments line. In the past, all of our cash and investments balance was carried in the general fund. The auditors have asked that we implement something they call a treasury fund concept, where we spread the cash across all of the funds. That was a little perplexing to me at first, trying to understand it, because what cash and investments was to us traditionally is the sum of all of our bank balances at Chase and at Wintrust and all, and our investment balances. And there was no way to spread that across the funds. the checking account is the checking account, it has that balance in it. We don't like, say, we have 7 different checking accounts and have different balances in them. After a lot of conversations with Kate, I really came to understand basically what they're doing with this concept is they're eliminating our due to, due from accounting process, which it's just, in a way, it's just an accounting thing. But now that it's implemented, and I've implemented their request, and it's reflected in this, I can see what the benefit is, what they were trying to accomplish. We don't really have traditional due from, due to type accounting, in that we make a conscious decision, we're gonna lend money from this fund to that fund. That's the truer form of due from, due to accounting. What the due from, due to accounting did was it raised our assets in the smaller funds by the amount that was due to them, and it was a liability on the other side of the balance sheet in the corporate fund. So it kind of, from an accounting standpoint, artificially inflated our assets and our liabilities. It kept the balance sheet in balance, but there was an artificial inflation on both sides. This treasury fund accounting approach that we're using now puts all the redistribution of the money on the same side of the balance sheet, so there's no inflation. So basically, the bank accounts are a sub-account of the cash account for the general fund, and in there, we make transfers out that used to be the old due to entries to the other funds, which are the same account number, just for those funds. So you'll now see a cash balance in all of the funds that's equal to what used to be the due from balance in all of the funds. You know, in a way, it's just a renaming of due from. That's effectively all it is. If we were a more complicated park district, it wouldn't be that simple, but for us, it really is that simple. So that's what's up there. Now, we don't do that accounting. You know, that's a settling up process that happens. It has to do with how the trial balance works and how the bills are paid, because we pay all the bills out of the checking account, which is in the corporate fund, and we bring all the revenue into the corporate fund and the fund, but a lot of that revenue belongs to the revenue fund. So there's a settling between the accounts that has to take place, and we generally only do that accounting once a year as we're closing out the books. That's when we actually calculate it. Throughout the year, we have kind of a forced balanced figure in the accounting process that's the pending transfers. And so that is shown on the balance sheet. Here's the second line, cash and investments, unapplied transfers. It's what used to be called the unapplied interfund transfers. But I positioned it right by the cash and investments line, so you can manually very quickly see if we were to do the year-end settling up of numbers now, you would just combine those two lines together. So the general, you'd add the 193,000 and the 71,000, that would be the real number at this moment in time if we were to close the books right now. Recreation would be the 430,000 minus 71,000. But there's no, it's just a lot of extra accounting steps that I have to go through every month that would constantly need revision. It would just be very, very worky on my side to apply those numbers every single month. So I'm gonna kind of stick with, at least, it has to be done at year end as a part of closing out. If I can maybe do one mid-year or quarterly, I'll look into doing that, but to do it every month is just way too complicated to try and do. That'll make a little more sense in a minute when we look at another report. I'm sorry, Pat, you got a question?
So if you would just explain where the $64,000 number in the capital projects came from?
For the cash,
Yes.
that would have been the former due from. The reason we have a balance in there is because that's the unspent money off the Van Den Haven bequest that we got last year into the capital fund.
Okay, so that's the quest basically, and not anything that we budgeted or anything like that.
Correct.
It's just what's there from that.
Right. I mean, there is a little residual balance from some prior years in there as well, but we haven't, this year's budget, we didn't call for any specific transfer over to that fund, or it would reflect that at the point in time we do that transfer. We usually, right around this time of year, we usually in January, we vote on a transfer because we passed the levy ordinance that we call for that transfer, but we didn't do one of those this year, so it is just strictly the vanity request this year.
And on our assets,
Yes.
the January report, total on the right column, combining all, 1.6 million.
Right.
That's including estimated assets of the property, or
No.
this is cash
That,
in different funds?
right. That's just what we do in our accounting. As Kate was saying, the annual report takes
Got it.
it to another level, governmental funds reporting. So what I don't do in the accounting at the level I work with it is, I'm not doing pension accounting, I'm not doing depreciation accounting. That's
Okay.
done for us by the auditors.
Okay.
So when you look at it, it's basically two numbers. It's the actual cash in our bank accounts, 931,000,
Right.
and it's our taxes receivable. That's your levy ordinance that you
Right.
passed, that
That's
we're
coming.
waiting to receive that property tax income.
Got it.
And those are the only two numbers that go into that 1.6. The liability side, very little change there, other than like the due to is now zeroed out. The fund balances are what the fund balances have been. They've got some new categories of how they report that. The annual report is different this year. I did not change my report to match their version, because theirs is much more verbose, but basically summarizes up to these same four categories: non-spendable, restricted, assigned, and unassigned. That's it for the commentary on the balance sheet. Similar to the balance sheet is the trial balance, and again, I give you two versions. I haven't in a while, for some time, been giving you the trial balance, because it was basically a greater level of detail than the balance sheet, and I was trying to just keep it simple for you. But because of the changes, I gave you a copy of the trial balance. It's a much simplified trial balance from what you have seen in the past. And the reason it's so simplified are two accounting changes. One is the establishment of the treasury fund. So you no longer see on here the detail of all the bank relationships, because it all rolls up into the cash and investments line item, account number C201 that you see up in the middle of the assets. And the second reason is the tax receivables. In the past, we kept track of tax receivables by each year, going back 5 years. After discussions with the auditors, because what I would typically do is once something rolled off 5 or 6 years out and we haven't been receiving any more money for that tax year from Cook County, I would do an accounting process to close out that account, charge off the uncollected tax revenue, and eliminate it from our assets and liabilities. The auditors did not recognize my writing off of the 2015 tax year because of the timing of when the entry was made. And so it was something I could have done at the beginning of this year. But as I was discussing that discrepancy with Kate, she said, I don't understand why you guys do it that way. I said, well, I'm open to alternatives, because all we really care is current year and prior years, like you do with deferred revenue, like we do with on the statement of revenue appropriations, where we do the tax receipts that way. She said, that's adequate. I said, well, I know part of the reason why we did what we did in the past was because each year the allocation of the tax revenue received, what we do is we get a big lump sum number from the county, and then we have to spread it according to, well, our levy ordinance said we were going to collect 600,000. 50% of that was going to the corporate fund, 30% was going to recreation, 20% was going to, we had to break it down based upon the numbers in the levy. And that relative ratio changes every year based upon the budget numbers in the levy ordinance. So we were very precise in each year staying true to the original levy intent. And she said, we don't really, that's what other tax districts do, you don't really need to do that much level of detail. And when we started looking at some examples, it really came down to small dollars. I mean, maybe by the time you're that many years out, the amount of money you're getting for those prior years is such small stuff, and then the percentage is very, the funds by such small. So she said, everyone else just does it based on the allocation of the immediate prior year, and she said, and we're okay with that. And I said, that's great, that's a lot less accounting work for me, and so that's what we have implemented in the current year. So it simplifies our balance sheet because it eliminated a whole bunch of accounts, and we just now have those true receivable accounts. And that pretty much wraps up the discussion of the trial balance, why it's so much cleaner. So it almost looks the same as the balance sheet, it's only slightly more detailed than the balance sheet now. Just checking the notes to see if there's anything else that changed that isn't merits now. So now I'm going to turn to the cash and investment reconciliation report. With the implementation of the Treasury Fund accounting methodology that the auditors asked for, this report now serves multiple purposes, and I was able to reformat it a little bit. This was one that was a little hard to read in the past with the indentations. It's still not the easiest to read, but the indentations make a little more sense now. What you'll see is the overall title of the Treasury Fund, and the first line item is the corporate funds, the general funds, accounting entries. And so what that's telling, that's the former due to other accounts kind of amount. So it's saying out of the corporate fund, out of the general fund, we've transferred $738,000 to the other funds. And in the corporate fund, we're carrying for each, so this report's serving two purposes. One is it has to demonstrate the reconcilement of the bank accounts to the actual statement balances, which it does. And the new function is it's going to show the reconcilement of the bank accounts to all the cash accounts spread across the funds. So as we kind of work down the report, that's what you're going to see happen. So, you know, the next section is the Chase Bank relationships. We have the 3 bank accounts. For accounting purposes, it's the account C200, C204, and 208. The general account, the petty cash account, and the payroll account. The format of each of them is the same. We start with the bank balance. So on the general account bank balance, it's $125,000. You got an approved, not cleared report last month that had entries on there totaling 7,590 items, 1,000 items that had not cleared the banks, so we have to make an adjustment to the bank balance. We carry on our books the 117,000 because that's eventually what the bank balance will be when those items clear. Similarly with the petty cash and payroll account, Byline itemizes the CDs and gives the total. Illinois Funds shows our total. U.S. Bank gives our total and our relationship there, and Wintrust gives the breakdown of the balances of Wintrust. So that the total in all the bank accounts is $931,440.08. That's to the positive side, minus the $738,000 that was up at the top. That leaves the general fund balance of $193,000. So that's how we get to the general fund balance. And then the IMRF balance of $14,000, liability of $15,000, capital projects of $64,000, the recreation fund of $430,000, Social Security and working cash. All the breakdown into the other funds adds up to the same $931,440.08. So there's the fund, all the balances left in the funds adds up to the same balances as we have in the bank accounts. That's a beautiful thing. So that's all the changes in that report as a result of the audit this year. Final report is the statement of revenue and appropriations. What you want to call disbursements or expenditures, whatever. Main thing I did there was I took the working cash fund off of that report because we never have revenue to it. It's kind of, it was just taking up space on the columns. And that then freed up a little bit of room to reformat this to add the ordinance amount column next to it so you can do a quick comparison of our actual revenue against what our plan in the levy and appropriations ordinance is. But the numbers are the same numbers as last month. There are no other changes to that report other than that. I think that's it.
Jerry, a question,
Yes.
and you may not be able to answer, but Natalie and Brian, you might be able to, is part of your report this, what's it called, the report to the county, I guess, disbursements and receipts?
Yes.
There's two categories, one's disbursements, and the other, which looks like salaries and wage disbursement. Then the second section is probably disbursements to,
Okay, the top section under salaries and wages comes from the payroll report.
right,
Okay, the bottom section comes from your corporate bill, your monthly bills reports that you vote on.
the folks that we pay to get the business done. My question is, with the equity lens, as we look at this,
The format of this is dictated by state law.
yes,
Okay, so up at the top, we used to detail every individual employee's wages. Now we started several years ago, since I became treasurer, we just use the state required groupings. And that's all we do is the state required groupings, not the individual person's dollar amounts. We used to do every individual person's dollar.
oh, right, you add them up in sections.
Right.
Yeah, so my question is, for next month, is there a way, Brian, maybe to give us a report in numbers? So how many employees for this report, how many providers in this report, and is there any way we can use an equity lens on that and kind of determine how many employees of color we had? And same with disbursements on the providers, how many businesses of color did we use? Is that possible? It may not be possible.
I don't know if it's legal. I could guess.
This is not a monthly report.
No, this is annual.
No, but this is, the month, it comes from regular monthly available reports. All the figures in the top half are from ADP, so it's our payroll provider. And to your point, there may be legal issues there on the employees. But for the vendors, we don't collect that demographic information, but going forward, would that be an option possibly? On the other disbursements, the vendors down below, the only things you see itemized, again, this format is dictated by state law, is we must itemize all vendors and the actual dollar amount to that vendor for amounts over $2,500 in the aggregate for the year. Okay? Everyone else gets lumped into the all other disbursements under $2,500. But there's a whole lot more vendors than what you see here. You just see the ones that are $2,500 or more.
Right, my interest on the equity lens part is just if there's any way we can measure how we're distributing our disbursements to people of color in our community. And there may not be a way to do that, but maybe there is. And maybe it's our equity committee that needs to help you with that.
Right, but
When you look at the vendors, you don't see a lot of individual names. They're
No.
mostly corporations and companies.
Well, right, and so what I don't know as a commissioner is if these vendors are all like personal friends of folks in our community. I don't know who they are.
you ask that every year. None of them are personal friends. I do know Vanell Andrews for years. He's a minority contractor.
Well, that's what I'm at. I don't need to get emotional about it. I'm just saying, is there a way for us to be able to report to the community, just like you said, that's a good thing, that some of our vendors are, minority owned. That's good.
I certainly think that's true.
Yeah.
And as I look at the vendor portion, the majority of, Little Tikes is a corporation. Besides the corporations, the vendors are mostly minority, and I can document it.
And see, that's good news.
Yeah.
Right? And then on the disbursements for the salaries, sort of the same thing, if it's possible.
We could guess.
Yeah, I
We
think
can't
that's actually,
guess. We
yeah,
can't
that's
guess.
something that we're gonna, I think brainstorming about, wherever we can apply an equity lens is obviously always a good idea. But this particular issue, I don't know if we can go anywhere else on that tonight, because there's some limitations on reporting, individuals' private information. Their names are already on this document, which people might even, not be wild about in the first place. And then, if people don't want to report on any of their demographic information, that's probably their prerogative. So, I mean, we'll certainly be working on collecting data and looking at everything we can through an equity lens. I'm not sure this particular example is something we can do anything about tonight.
Well, I wasn't looking for any answer tonight, it was actually for next month, and I would like to clarify, this is public information. So anyone who works for us and gets paid, that's public information. So, well, however they feel about it, it's not our business. Our business is to report, this, and it's done well. I trust this report. But I'm just curious if there's a way.
Do you want me to write a name?
No.
Stop this conversation, let's move on. because we're
Excuse
not-
me,
no, thi-
Commissioner,
this
I
is
have a
some-
right to ask
This
this.
is just done from a legal perspective. And to start putting, the race of somebody's,
I didn't
ethnicity
ask
in
that.
this is ridiculous.
I didn't ask
Let's move
that.
on.
I'm talking about percentages roughly.
I could give you
Because
perspective.
to me, that's a very valuable tool to measure as we go year to year how we are distributing equitably. And I don't know what the answer is, that's all.
The
But
only
not
thing,
personally, not each individual.
Well, that's what I heard, so.
That's not what I'm
let's
asking.
move on. We've wasted enough time on that issue.
Did you want to say something, Carol?
well, I was just gonna say, in terms of collecting that information, we also don't collect that information from our employees. So we need to talk to Charles and make sure that we can. So that would be something that would start happening in the same way that we're starting to collect graphics about the campers.
Participants, yeah.
Right, so that would be something that we would be able to do, as long as they approve and Charles says it's fine, then we can give you a percentage at the end of the summer.
And not just Charles, but I think that deserves a board discussion. Because if we are truly trying to build trust in our community, this is a big chunk of it. And I think if there's any legal, I agree with you, Natalie, if there's any legal way to do that, it behooves us to find those tools to do it. That's all, and not individually, Tricia, I really wasn't saying that. I was talking
You have to
about
start with the
percentage.
individual. You have to start with the individual before you can get,
Percentages.
to get the information that you want.
Well, yeah, but if we have 90% white folks that are being paid by our district, that's disproportionate to our demographics in our district. So I would have a personal issue with that. I think we need to look at that and find a way to measure that we trust, that's all.
We
And
do,
as long as it's legal.
we do. And
Yeah,
I know that we've reported that in the summer, we've had those conversations before about the summer staff,
yeah.
and reported on the percentage of the summer staff that are people of color. So,
Yes.
the problem with it, I can't look at that and tell you,
No,
I would have to ask that, right? So
Right.
that's something that we can look at. moving
that's
forward.
fair.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I think I see a misspelling. It says Oysterman for Amy. I don't think there's a Y.
Oysterman?
Yeah, there's no way.
Well, that comes off the payroll report, so that's how she's entered in the payroll.
Okay.
It's literally a cut and paste out of the ADP payroll report.
I'll pass that to Jeff.
Natalie, for you, your report?
All right. This month, we're celebrating Black History Month. We are reading a book called Binga, The Rise and Fall of Chicago's First Black Banker by Don Keener. You are all welcome to join us for a discussion of this book on February 23rd at 3 p.m. here at the Community House. The IAPD IPRA conference, I was there January 23rd through the 25th. I attended the following workshops. I won't read them for you, you can read them. The conference was great. The keynote speaker was Jarrett Payton, who was excellent. It was a really good conference experience. I learned a lot of good things. The new website has been launched. Matt did a fantastic job. It's beautiful. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, please do. Summer camp registration opens tomorrow at 10. I will not be available for anything tomorrow. We are expecting a very high amount of incoming registration and website traffic. So think of me at 10 a.m., all of us. The Ridgeville Ecology Club. So I met with a group of interested gardeners to begin plans for some additional gardening opportunities at our parks. This meeting included Matt and Martha. We've budgeted some funds this year for park beautification. We're starting to think about how to get that done in the early spring. Our other existing garden programs currently include Garden to Table. We have the Elks Garden Plots, and now we have the new Ridgeville Rain Garden. There's individuals that approach me a lot about gardening opportunities, so I felt like it would be the best to put us all in one room so that people could brainstorm and think about new things that we can do, which is exactly what we did. So we're calling it the Ridgeville Ecology Club. As things come up, as opportunities arise for volunteers in the community to get involved, I'll keep everybody updated. I'm working on some Earth Day activities currently.
When is that day?
Earth Day?
Yeah.
Don't know.
About
April 20th.
April 20th?
Is it
Yeah.
always the 20th? No.
Is it always 20th?
I don't know.
April.
I don't know if it's falls on any day of the week, whatever the
It's
20th
always
is.
in
Yeah, it's in
Yes.
April. But our new garden to table instructor, Abby, has an idea about some like seed ball things that she's done before. She said it's a great activity for like families to do. So we're gonna talk about that and some opportunities to like plant, pick up trash and do some fun things. I don't have details on that yet. I will tell you, I'll report back probably next month on that. Ridgeville Youth Grow Team. So Catherine Egan is one of the gardeners in our community that actually has been approaching me for a couple of years to try to get some kind of youth urban agricultural program started here. She's run some programs for some other organizations locally and had a lot of success. So I've been working with her on developing this program. As it stands now, the goal is to hire 6 to 8 teens from the Mayor's Summer Youth Employment Program. She's actually reached out to them, and the city is actually going to pay them to work here. She will supervise, she would be on our payroll. We're working all this out. And what that would be is it's a 10-week course in the summer. These kids are paid through the city. They would help relieve a lot of our pressure in terms of like maintaining all of the gardens around here. They would have 2 plots at Elks. In the past, we've reserved plots 15 for growth for Edible Evanston for the food pantry. So they would take that on, and they would be able to maintain those 2 plots, so they would get to learn about gardening. There's an educational element to this program. Catherine would do workshops with them, teach them about entrepreneurship and the benefits of gardening and the health benefits. And so it sounds like a super cool program. I applied for a grant to assist with that in the 2021 fiscal year. That would provide some tools and other items for this program. Still working this out with her and Brian and Jerry soon. So I will continue to report on that as we figure it out. But it sounds really great. I'm really excited about it. And it provides more job opportunities for youth here in Evanston. The Anti-Racism Festival of the Arts. Fuchsia Winrow, who's the founder of Anti-Racism Playdates, connected with us about partnership on a festival she's planning for June. This Festival of the Arts will feature the work of local artists, music, youth engagement, etc. We're working with her to host the festival at Cayman East, and then we are also working with her to assist in a fundraising event that will be here in March. Another one of those things, as I continue to make plans with her, I will report back to everybody about what that's going to be. But we've confirmed that we're going to move forward with this, so we are partnering with her in this event. Racial Equity and Outreach Committee. Okay, I have a report here. Do you want me to save that for the line item? Or do you want me to go ahead and do that now?
Yeah, no, just do it now.
Yeah, I would say do it now.
Do it now?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so I typed up, so that you had a reference of some of the work and the conversations that Martha and I have been having. Dan has recently joined us, so we will catch him up to speed as soon as we can all get together. So Martha and I participated in a vision session with the YWCA equity team. It was super useful for us in terms of making sure Martha and I were the same page about what this work is and why we're doing it and how we want to move forward with it and identifying the next steps. And this is kind of my interpretation of what we've come up with. So some of it is a recommendation, some of it is just kind of catching you all up to speed. So the first thing that we need to do, or one of the first things that we need to do, is continue developing this racial equity and outreach committee. So I've created a participation survey, and I have sent it to 250 program participants from between the fall of 2019 and today. So every parent or adult person that has participated in a program from like September to now got this participation survey. So on the survey, it basically just asks like, who are you, where do you live, those kinds of things, and then says, in what ways would you be interested in participating in this work with us? And I wrote an email that was attached to it, which was very simple, that we don't even know necessarily what this work is yet. We just want to know who's interested in being involved. So I've gotten some responses from that. I think the next step is to look through that and see which of those individuals are interested in actually being on this committee, and that will help us form the committee. Great. So that's the first thing. Once that committee and the leaders are selected, we feel that it's an important step to have some kind of vision session, workshop, training, something with all of us. So the whole board, the whole staff, and whoever these leaders are on this committee, come together to create a unified vision, unified language, and mission statement for what this why this equity action plan is important, and to get everybody on the same page about how we're going to communicate about it to the community moving forward. So that's something that we know needs to happen. And the last thing that we know needs to happen is an assessment. So with this unified mission and a sense of purpose, we will begin our assessment. So Martha and I have spoke with Pat Effion, and she has provided a proposal for an equity assessment, which you all have. Did we pass this out?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So you can take a peek at that.
Is it attached to your report?
No, I think Brian gave it
I
separately.
have 2 copies in mine.
I just don't have a copy.
I have 2 in my
Oh,
folder.
okay, thanks.
So you're all welcome to take a peek at this. This is what the assessment with Pat would look like, and what we would get from it. And after the assessment is done, we would get a list of recommendations from her findings that would help us create an equity action plan, which we would then use with this committee to figure out what our next steps are. So, and then at the bottom here of my report, I just did a summary of all of that. And that's it.
Are you looking for a recommendation from us then?
Well, we can get into that a little bit more, I think, when you all talk about the equity consulting contract from the YWCA, because I think there's some other conversations that Martha will need to have with
Oh,
everybody.
for tonight, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
fine.
Martha, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, to my report?
Let's see. I just wanted to say, you may have said it, and I missed it, but, in the, survey, is that what we're calling it, a participation survey?
Yeah.
In addition to asking where people live, obviously, to, see if they're in the district or not, we're asking general age range, I think is how it broke down, not actual age, but age range. And, race obviously was one of the questions, because we are seeking, people of color to be on our leadership committee for equity and outreach work. And we have gotten some responses already, so, just to add to that, that we'll be connecting with the people who've already responded, and hopefully we'll get additional responses as well. I think we have some work to do in terms of defining, how many people are we seeking? When will we be done, so to speak, forming the committee, or will it be ongoing, that people can continue to join? Is there a term length for being on the committee? Those kinds of things are kind of logistics that we can talk about moving forward, but definitely getting more members of the community. And, thus far, we only had one board member out of the 5 of us, so Dan joined as well recently, as Natalie already said.
Can I say one thing about that? So I reached out to those 250 program participants because they're stakeholders of Ridgeville Park District. They are familiar here. They and their family spend time here with us. I reached out to them first, in an effort to build the committee. Beyond that, once that step is completed, I will open that up to everybody. So like anybody who wants to jump in on the equity work that we're doing, there's a place for everyone at the table. So it's not a closed off survey, it's not like those are the only folks that can be involved. It's open to everybody, it will eventually be open to everybody, so.
I mean, from our earlier discussion, we have no idea the demographics of the less than 300 respondents. or
We will
people.
when they respond to the survey.
But I mean, right now, we don't know their demographics, right? So it could
Right.
be 100% white or
Yeah.
20%
It's
of color,
not-
we just
yeah.
don't know. So I'm glad to hear that we're gonna open it up to the
Yes.
whole community.
Absolutely.
And speaking of opening it up, it sounded like, there were some logistical concerns about creating those lists and, it's not as simple as push a button and email everybody. So I just want to be clear that that's part of the reason, correct me if I'm wrong, Natalie, that we started with, participants as of fall 19 to current, as opposed to emailing all previous participants, because that would simply be a larger, group of people that we would connect with. I think as time allows for it, it's clear that tomorrow will not be the day for this, but, we may want to create another list going a little bit farther back, maybe to include summer participants. I already mentioned that to Natalie, and she did say that there's a lot of overlap already.
There's a lot of
So, if we email people who were in programs starting in this past fall, there is a good chance, it sounds like, that they were also in summer programs.
And the integration between our registration forms and our MailChimp account, when I send this as an email blast to everybody, it will include everybody. Like, it will include everybody that's registered for a program.
Or is in our
Ever.
email list,
Right.
period.
Yeah. So it will be all inclusive. I haven't taken that step yet. I'm waiting till we kind of iron out some more details.
Yeah, and I just wanna add to the idea of the stakeholders being our participants. In a sense, a stakeholder in the Ridgeville Park District is anyone who pays taxes and lives within the district. Another sense of stakeholder is anyone in Evanston, because Ridgeville isn't just for Ridgeville residents, it's for anyone, it's for Rogers Park, it's for whoever wants to come here. So I think that's like another way to view the stages of reaching out to people, because it's not like we only care about the opinions of the people who have already been part of our programming, but in terms of just proximity, not evaluation, but just a proximity to us and familiarity with us, we felt it made sense to start there with people who are already part of what we're doing. But absolutely, I want to see us reach out to people who aren't here, because as we talk about with equity, who's in the room, who's not in the room, who's participating, who's not, and why. And, digging deeper into some of those issues is absolutely on the agenda. Yeah, so in terms of adding to what you said, well, I want to talk more about Pat Effingham and about the YW, but I think that's kind of where we're going to go later in the agenda, right? So in terms of ending with your report, I think we can do that now, if you feel good about that. Does anybody have any questions for Natalie? Okay, and, so we'll move on, and we don't have anything from Jessica, correct?
No.
Okay. So moving into old business, our first point is, discuss the motion to establish safe and the barbecue thing. So, as I understand it, I was not at last meeting. I think we resolved to make a date, and a date is set for walking the park so that we can get a physical presence on what those barbecue locations are gonna look like and that kind of thing.
Correct.
Okay,
March
so
14th, 8 a.m.
March 14th, okay. 8 a.m., and that already works for everybody? That's a set date? I can attend as well, I wasn't able to get in last month, but we're set for that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so then we're just kind of moving over that item for today to discuss the update on the equity action plan from the YWCA, and this has your name on it. Did you want to say anything, or?
No, I feel like that's kind of what Natalie looked to.
That was,
speak on it, or?
well, I was just gonna say something that came up when I was talking to Martha about that. Are you comfortable taking that line item off of the agenda and adding it to monthly reports?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
So
so
that
I
way
think
it
it was
does-
equity period, we're gonna
Yes,
have that
so
be like a monthly report.
it'll be a monthly equity report.
Great.
Yeah, and just to be clear, that's racial equity is what we're focusing on right now. We also have plans, though not specific at all, to focus on other kinds mean, it was your agenda item, but to be clear, you want to hear from us. This is not something you're speaking on. This is you hearing from us.
Correct.
Okay, so, Natalie, how do you wanna do that then? Do you want me to speak, or do you wanna expand on?
For the, are you the contract?
Well, yeah, no, so, yeah, I'm not totally clear what the difference is between B and C, because this has Mitchell's name on it, but he wants to hear from us. Discuss / approve equity consulting contract from the YW is a bit more specific. It's,
I think Matt's good with my report.
okay, so we're moving on then
Yes.
to the next one. Okay. Okay, so where we're at, for anyone who's been tuning into the discussions that we've been having about hiring an equity consultant to work with us to do things like look at our policies, procedures, practices, everything, programming, a lot of P's there, through an equity lens. We have been in discussion for a while now with the YW after voting to move forward with the YWCA's Equity Institute. We've had some new developments, and one of them is that I've been speaking with Todd Effiam, who used to be with the city of Evanston in an equity capacity and is no longer with the city currently, which meant that she and I started talking about maybe having her do some work with us. And that's because ever since I met her, I'm going like this because she's sitting in the crowd here. I'm just amazed by everything about her. The way she speaks is something that comes right in. I understand, and I think we're on the same page. She understands Evanston so well, and a lot of what is Ridgeville is also what is Evanston. And so I'm really excited to work with her. It feels slightly strange to have been in conversation with the YW Equity Institute for so long now about working with them as consultants for this work and to be some kind of changing direction a bit here. We absolutely plan to partner with the YWCA in many ways, specifically continuing to go to their workshops. They have a current series of 4, and I think I heard that they may be developing additional workshops. I've gone to 3 of them. I'm not quite sure if people want to talk about which ones they've gone to or plan to go to. I think it would be great if we could get all commissioners to go to all workshops, if that's possible with people's schedules. Another resource with the YW that we plan to take advantage of and benefit from is the Equity Summit, which Natalie attended last year. I think you're the only one of us that went last year. I'll be going if I can work that into my schedule, which I think I can do. That's coming up in March. So there's, a lot that the YWCA Equity Institute offers the community. It's a great resource. We absolutely plan to, partner with them in various ways into the future. But in terms of having a consultant who helps us very closely figure out, what we need to focus on in the realm of equity here at the Ridgeville Park District, Natalie and I are feeling after meeting with Pat that we would like to hire her for that work. And so we have that proposal submitted by her. And I think maybe at this point we could, have people take a look at it if you haven't had a chance and see if there's any questions about it. I will highlight that just from a bulleted standpoint, some of the reasons that I see Pat being so beneficial for us and such a good fit for us. For one, you'll notice that her total for this work, which, it's maybe not fair to say complete apples to apples comparison with the YW, but definitely similar scope of work, is considerably less than the total for the YW. And because we obviously have a limited budget, it's natural that we would consider that as important. I also just have a lot of respect for all of the experience that Pat brings to the table in this realm, and I look forward to benefiting as a district and personally from all of that experience. And yeah, so I'll open it up to see if anybody has any questions or issues or.
I'm a little confused, just because I thought that we as a board had committed to the YWCA. My understanding from tonight is that we hadn't signed a contract, and both of you are suggesting that we don't sign the contract and go.
That's our recommendation. I mean, at this.
Dr. Effiam's.
Yeah, so as the equity committee so far, a committee would traditionally bring a recommendation back to the rest of the board. All of you have, so far not been as intimately involved in this process and in these discussions as we have been. So, that's kind of what we're doing. Based on our thoughts and experiences and conversations, we're we're wanting to head in that direction. I do feel a little bit uncomfortable, not necessarily confused myself, but I do feel uncomfortable that we, had a vote. I did want to highlight, I don't think I said this so far, well, I kind of did. Pat Effium was not, one of the people that, submitted a proposal originally. So we looked at who we looked at. We looked at the YW, Blue Sky. Dr. Logan was, in the running there for a little bit. I don't think he submitted a final proposal to us, but, that vote that we took was based on what we had in front of us at that point in time. And because Pat was with the city, she did come and speak at our meeting, and that was very helpful, but she was clear at that time that she wasn't coming to us pitching herself, and her services. She was just speaking as a community member who has a lot of relevant, professional work and personal experience. That's why I say that things changed a little bit, and we're in a position to be hiring her, and that's where I'm at with it.
Can I
Yeah,
say something
yeah,
about
please.
that? The original, so the YWCA had given us their original contract, which was much more expansive than what we're looking at right here. And we had asked them to send us another contract with specifically the assessment, and what we would be spending between now and the end of June, right? So this is the contract that we have in front of us, is for the assessment with the YW. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity to work with I hope so, because I value that partnership very much. So I hope that there's lots of opportunities to continue to still hire the YW to do equity work with us once the assessment is done. But I think the assessment that Pat has proposed to us is much more specific and much more the kind of help that Martha and I have discovered that we needed. The scope of time that it would take is shorter, it's more direct. I understand exactly what this is. I mean, as you know, it's been months that we've been working with the YW, and it's been a little bit challenging to figure out what the assessment even is. Their assessment also, I think they documented 50 hours in this contract, but we still don't really know if it's 50 hours of work that they're doing, or if it's 50 hours of work that we're doing. I have a very clear idea that this assessment with Pat is work that she is doing to assess the park district. So beyond surveys or questions that she would have with staff, it's an assessment that she completely does on her own. So I guess the point of that is that it's not necessarily not working with YW, it's hiring Pat to do the assessment portion, and then from that, we figure out what the scope of our equity work needs to be, and then we can do that. So it's in addition as opposed to instead of.
But she could provide that service also, so.
I believe so, sure.
Well, right, and a lot of that remains to be seen. I think that part of the pressure that I felt personally diving into doing equity work for the Park District was the pressure to feel like we need to know exactly what we need right now and start working on it. Well, focusing on equity when there hasn't already been a significant focus on equity, what I've learned is that part of that process is figuring out, there's a lot of figuring out that happens initially in terms of, what are we going to look at and why, and it's kind of if you collect data, you need to know why you're collecting that data, because you need to have some sense of what you're gonna do with it afterwards, and then how you're going to be better after looking at that data, and then what steps that will inform. So, there's obviously some planning, there's some vision into the future, but there's also kind of a lot to be decided, because what I understand an assessment to be offering us, once it's done, is, having a much better sense of what we're diving into next. The assessment is just that initial part of the process, and we will get recommendations and a report from Pat Effium at the end of that assessment, and we will, it remains to be seen what we focus on, what we do, how we make things better, that kind of stuff.
It'd be helpful for me just to remember what we did decide as a board. I believe in our budget, we set aside, was it 14,000
I think it was 14.
for equity work?
Mhm.
And did we also vote on the YWCA contracting with us to do some of that?
We did not vote on contracting with them, technically. We voted on liking their proposal the best, if I remember correctly, and wanting to move with them at that point in time.
So
They
my-
then gave us a contract for, I think, $26,000. We asked them to cut it down significantly so that it would fit in our budget. what they came back with at 9,000 was essentially prepping for the assessment and the assessment itself. That's all that was in the quote at that point. You have to remember that we have spent some money
Right.
on the workshops, we'll
Right.
continue to do some workshops.
Right.
The summit will cost some money too. And of course, I wanna be very clear that we have to talk to Tiffany and the YW, you know, whether or not we continue with them in any capacity. I'm sure we owe them some money for all of the consultation that we've been doing with them so far. So we can figure that out with them. There's
So
definitely been,
we don't have a contract with the YWCA.
we have a physical contract that has not yet been signed.
Oh, for 9,000.
Yes.
And could we compare that with that? Do we have copies of it?
Yes, we do. Two. There's one that's been amended by Charles, and there was the original as well. You should have two copies of the same contract.
In my packet, I didn't get one.
Charles says revised right on the top. I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah, it looks like
that's
this.
all right. So that's this, the revised. Oh, okay, I do have it, yep. There we go. And what you're recommending is not do the revised for the Y. Do Pat's, sign that tonight or whenever, soon,
Mhm.
but still work with the Y in a different way.
Right, down the line is definitely possible, and as we said, we're already partnering with them through doing
Okay.
workshops, through the summit, and you
Right.
know, definitely through other avenues, because that's kind of become Natalie's specialty, is creating and maintaining partnerships, right, with other entities in the community. So, you know, I want to stress that I think Pat FM is an excellent fit for us. I think the YW would have been an okay fit for us too, in many ways, but in you know, in this realm especially, but really with anything where we're gonna be looking at multiple quotes, I think it makes sense to go with what we think is the best fit. And I think there's a lot of good reasons for going with Pat. Timeline, total cost, you know, the wealth of experience that she brings to the table, familiarity with Evanston, and all kinds of things. So, so yeah, that's where we're at. That's our recommendation as a committee in a formal sense. It's our recommendation after being the ones who have had many, many conversations, many emails back and forth. You know, the visioning session that we did with the YW, and kind of getting more clear throughout that process on what we want to do and why. And getting too deep into that isn't, I don't think, my intention right now, because that's kind of work for the committee and it's work for us to do on our own and then bring back to the board and to the public when we're a little bit more clear on that. But yeah, did you have other questions? I don't know if we clarified for you, like what you were asking about.
Yeah.
Okay. As you all know, this has been a lengthy process and not a lot has gotten done. There's been a significant delays in communication, and I think everyone, I hope I speak for everyone, that we want to get started. We don't want to just talk anymore. We want to do some real work. So I think Pat is the person to get started with that on, and I would love to see us, you know, jump in as soon as possible. I don't want to push too hard for any, you know, binding decisions. Tonight, I also don't know, Pat, you know, this is a proposal. I don't know if you view like a contract to be a next step, and then we could kind of, you know, officially take action on that next month. But again, do we want to wait a month before? No, I mean, I don't. So,
No, my takeaway is I would love to start with a contract as soon as possible. Take a vote tonight and get going on our assessment for equity. But also my takeaway is that we still have funds available to work with the Y. What I like about working with an institution is it's deeper, it's broader, there's more available in a sense to access and use for our district. So I'm glad we're still open to using the Y.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
and to get more specific about that, it's like when Pat does her assessment,
Yeah,
gives us her report and
Right,
recommendations.
right.
We will then have some specific content in terms of what was found and
Right.
what's recommended that we do. We'll
So-
cross that bridge when we come to it, and possibly with Pat, possibly with the YW, possibly both.
Sure.
Yeah, and I can assure you that relationship is very important to me
Yeah.
with the YW, so I want to work with them as much as I possibly can.
So I'm comfortable making a motion to accept our executive director going into a contract negotiation with Dr. Pat for this proposal for racial equity, diversity, and inclusion assessment, not to exceed 5,500, I don't know, it depends what the contract is, it says here 5,100, but, you know, you gotta work out the contract.
Right, and, you know, the contract would be for the work that
Yes.
is specified
Yes.
herein, and then there may be, you know, additional work that would be considered separate to that after the assessment, that kind of thing. Brian, help us out, is there another step that the board needs to take regarding signing a contract? Who signs the contract?
You,
I do,
but
okay.
there'd be a contract of which Charles would look at, and then April board meeting, or, I guess,
Could it be done before the April board meeting?
sure, I guess if you make the motion tonight, and we get the contract, and then,
Let's do that, let's see if we can make a motion to,
Why
is that
make
what
a
you
motion?
just
You make
did?
a motion, I'll second it. So Natalie, are you good with this? It sounds like it, but I just wanna hear specifically.
Yeah, I'm good with this. I'm good with this. It's important to me to continue working with the YW, but after talking with Pat, I'm really confident that she's the right person to do the assessment with, 100%.
Motion second?
So all in favor?
I said,
Aye?
Aye. Okay, so it sounds like we'll, look for a contract from
Yes,
you.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I'm excited.
you can get it to me, and then I'll get it moving,
Okay.
and then, the contract, then you can sign it before April,
Right.
before March.
Right. As soon as we have it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so are we really, through the agenda?
Yeah.
Well, we're at call of the commissioners, aren't we? I mean, have
New
we-
business.
Oh, new business, okay. I'm sorry.
wishful thinking.
Yeah, no, I saw this part that we moved up and I missed a bit. Okay, so new business. Discuss update on policies inspired by IAPD self-assessment, and that's yours, Mitchell, so.
Yeah. So at the last meeting, I committed to drafting, 5 policies, based off recommendations from, Matt and Brian. I was hoping to have this done by tonight, slower than I anticipated. I have been working with some folks at IAPD, I have some really good resources. Their conference kind of slowed they were focused on that. So I do not have that done today. I will commit to try to have that done by the next board meeting. And I would ask specifically the scholarship, what's the date on that you make decisions about scholarship?
Oh, for camp.
Yeah.
We try to look at it in like late March and get letters out by the beginning of April.
So then, I'm absolutely convinced of having that done, and the board can go on it by the next board meeting.
How do you, just because of timing here, how do you handle the possibility that camps may fill up just based on registrations that,
We
well,
take
they,
scholarships, and they get a spot, and
We reserve space for the people that request.
you walk in
Okay.
tomorrow and you needed help, you're in.
okay. So you're sort of,
Or next
you
week.
have a literal number that you've set aside, or it's not, no, okay.
No, but so on the registration form at the bottom,
Mhm.
you have the option of paying now or applying for scholarship assistance.
Mhm.
Regardless of what you choose, you have a spot in camp.
Oh,
So
okay.
if like 20% of the people registering tomorrow are applying for scholarship, we'll send them letters and figure that out later, but they still have a secured spot.
Okay, so on the website tomorrow, people have the option to select that they want to be considered for scholarship. Okay, so that speaks to your point in some ways, at
In some
least,
ways,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that maybe it was like a separate registration or something.
No.
Okay,
Our
that's it.
our scholarship process for application is very simple, like you say you need it and we help you. So, that's essentially what it is.
Then we notify them in April, and then sometimes go on payment plan, sometimes just one payment, it's done, partial payment, it's done.
Okay. That's great, and I also look forward to, what you're gonna put together, Matt, in terms of getting, more specific about policies regarding those things. I love the idea of giving as many scholarships as get asked for, and historically, we've been able to do that. We also don't advertise, I feel like, that we give scholarships quite as much as we could, and if we did, we may see a ton more people asking, so I think some of those things are,
It's all over the fancy new website now.
yeah. The website is awesome. Okay, so we're kind of tabling that then, it sounds like.
Yes.
Okay. So also, being tabled, because correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, we're gonna kind of look into a social media engagement policy of sorts, as part of policy updates, given that we're gonna connect with someone at IAPD who kind of specializes in that. That's relates to one of the workshops that Natalie attended at the recent conference, and, there's just some serious concerns about how we engage on social media, so we'll be looking at that next month then.
Sure, and yeah, I just add to that, since Natalie went to the workshop, her and I spoke about it, if you want to talk more about the workshop you went to, it was led by an attorney who creates social media policies, and for park districts, and kind of talked about the, pitfalls, potential pitfalls, that social media can bring. So Natalie gave me her notes, and I reached out to the attorney to see if, so the notes were great, but they did not have like a sample policy. So I reached out to the attorney to see if he had a sample policy for a park district or park districts with an active policy recently that he admires.
And you're waiting to hear back?
Yeah.
Yep. And, I mean, I'm fine to kind of, like, just table that particular one too, until we have more information about what other, park districts do, and at that point, I think we can go more into the details of why we need one in the first place and what the intentions are there. Unless you want to talk about the workshop at all, but.
No, I think we can talk about it when we have a sample policy, and we can get a little more specific about it, but the workshop was really interesting, and it was called like navigating the treacherous path of social media, and it was like specifically designed for commissioners, but because we had talked in the past about creating social media policy, I felt like it was a good thing to go to, and also as the person who manages all of our social media accounts, it was really interesting. So the policy really serves to like protect the park district, but also to protect individual commissioners and staff and whatnot. So I think it'll be a really useful thing. And they said in the workshop too, social media is a fairly new thing, and so lots of people are trying to figure, lots of local units of government or units of government are figuring out how to navigate it and creating policy around it. So hopefully we'll have some good templates here.
I'm just curious, was there a good attendance at that particular session?
Yeah, there was.
I'm so glad that he gave you the PowerPoint slide notes too. I didn't realize that until I got it from Matt. I'm still reviewing that because it's good info.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's just gonna stay on the agenda, as well for moving forward. So then at that point, I do believe we are at Call of the Commissioners. And I think we've been going alphabetically, yeah? So, Dan?
Just to update, our last call commissioners, I was able to update, folks on the Evanston Voter Initiative, process, which was, to go before the, electoral board of Evanston, which is the mayor and Ann Rainey, commissioner, alderperson Ann Rainey, and city clerk, Reed. And a vote of 2-1, they voted to, support the objections and take it off the ballot. And since then, there's been a circuit court hearing that heard the same similar arguments as the electoral board. And that was today, and I believe Commissioners McCourt's wife was there, and Commissioner Braun, and also also, our web, master. And, I wasn't there, but the report I got back was, that, the judge did, rule in favor of the objector, so it probably will be off the ballot. The group that's Edison Voter Initiative is taking it to the appellate court, and I have no idea how long that takes. But the early elections, I think, are right around the corner, so just so people know, that's probably off the ballot for now.
Okay, thank you. I think it is me now, and I just want to give a little bit more information about the event that's happening in March, that Fuchsia is putting on for a fundraiser for the Anti-Racism Arts Fest that she's gonna be holding in March, or in June. So to be clear, the fundraiser that will be held here is March 7th, it's a Saturday, it's at 3:30. And it is going to be a demonstration, and also after the demonstration or show, it's gonna be a chance for people to engage and try it out. And what it is capoeira. I don't know if people in the room are familiar with capoeira. I'm not an expert on it, so I shouldn't speak on it too much, but it's Brazilian, right? And it's sort of a combination of dance and martial arts and culture and music, and it's really awesome. I actually did do a little bit of it in high school, and it was really, really fun. So I'm super excited about it. Fuchsia is very active in the PTA at Washington, and so she's gotten her group, which is, it's spelled A-X-E with an accent over it, and I think it's pronounced Ache. And so that's offered in the city of Chicago, but she brought that group to Washington to offer some after-school programming there, and people have been loving it and asking for it in Evanston. So we're also hoping to, but not officially, gonna maybe be offering that capoeira as part of our programming here for people to sign up for and take the classes. So I'm really excited about that. I'm gonna sign up if we can fit it in. So again, March 7th at 3:30, it's a Saturday. It's an event here that is a fundraiser for the June event of an anti-racism festival for the
You're
arts.
paid for that event, in other words.
It's fundraising for that event,
I see.
yes. And so it's $25 for adults, it's $5 for lap children who won't participate. It's gonna be in this room. There is a limit to how many people we can hold in this space, so if you're interested, sign up soon. And you can do that on the website, yeah? No,
But sure.
okay. I'm looking at the Facebook event, so I don't know how it is. if people
Definitely do
are-
it on social media. I believe I shared that on our Facebook page.
Okay.
But I can figure out how to add it to the website.
That would be cool, if we can.
Great.
And then the event itself as well in June is, as you said in your report, is gonna be at one of our parks, and I think she's, yeah.
And then the event, does that raise money in June as well?
I think some of the details are still being worked out. It's not necessarily a money-raising event, it's more of an art event, yeah, and attend, and there might even be
This
interactive
helps
art.
pay for that event.
Yeah, and an art festival, usually people think of it as like artists selling their art. This is gonna be less about selling and more about just showing and, getting the community together, so, and, reach out to Fuchsia if you want more information, because I shouldn't be speaking on it so knowledgeably, because I'm not. But that is my call of the commissioner. Pat, do you have anything you want to share? Okay, Commissioner Mitchell.
We had a great 6-year-old birthday party at Human Park Fieldhouse. Thank you to Ruben, who set us up real nice. Also, I attended the Racial Healing Circle here at Ridgeville, along with the rest of the folks here. It was well attended, definitely worthwhile. There were 2 facilitators, it lasted for a couple hours, very well done. So thanks to everybody who
That was
participated.
one of our YWCA, projects, right?
Yes, it was. It was a partnership between them and
Yeah.
the Truth in Racial, what is it?
Oh.
The Truth in Racial, I can't remember the organization, but the organization that does the racial healing circles.
And we offer
They are
our
the
space as a
facilitators.
host.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, so now session, we have citizen comment, a section again at the end of the meeting. Would anyone like to speak?
I would just like to say, I really look forward to working with you all. Your potential and your desire to move forward in this work with equity is exciting. And one of the things for me is I do the work of equity because I have to live it every day. And so to see others who are just as committed and wanting to do the work of equity because it's meaningful is much appreciated. It's one of the reasons I'm going to be glad to partnership with you.
Thank you. All right, so I think, we do adjourn the meeting, right, before executive session?
You need
What's
a
that?
motion to adjourn,
Yeah.
we adjourn. You're adjourning for a reason to go into the executive session.
Okay,
The meeting's technically not over.
right, okay.
You know, last month we put off this review because.
Oh, right, yes. Mhm.
And thought that maybe it would be better to have commissioners to do review of the rest.
Mhm.
So the same situation applies today, obviously.
Yeah, I agree. Is everyone planning to be at the next meeting? Okay, and I assume Debbie is as well. I can't ask her at the moment, but I assume so. I think that makes sense. I think, no matter who isn't here, it's ideal to have us all here. It's only done once a year when we do these things, and so I think that's the right thing to do, and thank you for, postponing it for me last month. And so, again, as long as you're okay with that, okay. So that's gonna just be on the agenda for next month as well. Thank you for reminding me. I forgot we were talking
You
about
wanna move the table it like you did last month?
Yes. I believe that's proper. I move to table the, annual review of Mr. Rosinski next month.
that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now you can.
I move to adjourn the
Right.
meeting.
So, and we need a motion to adjourn? Yeah, okay. Anyone second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah,
There you go. Thank you for risking your health.
We have better ladders around here. I don't know why I'm stuck with this one.
Think you can come up with a little lever,
Like it.
bring it down.
Oh, that would be.
This is a
That would be
big one.
great.
Let me put my mind on it and run it by our buddy, okay?
Yeah, I think.
I'll donate.